Term miracle on ice. More than 40 years ago, a woman in the northwest corner of Minnesota made a remarkable recovery after literally being frozen solid.
Let's say you find yourself at a funeral service, solemnly saying your goodbyes to a person you believe has left this world. The atmosphere is filled with grief, and the occasion is emotionally charged. However, in a stunning turn of events, the individual who was thought to have passed away suddenly regains consciousness. While it might sound like a plot from a movie, these extraordinary situations have actually occurred. Join us as we embark on a journey through 15 times when people woke up at their own funerals. Number 15. Man wakes up in his autopsy. My father used to say that the first time could be a mistake, but what about the second and even the third time? It's hard to definitively claim that all three doctors were in error, but their conclusions were proven wrong a few years ago. Just hours before an autopsy was scheduled to commence, an inmate who had been declared dead by three different doctors regained consciousness in the mortuary, leaving Spanish prison officials bewildered. The inmate in question was Gonzalo Montoya Jimenez, who was 29 years old at the time. In January of 2018, during the morning roll call, he had been found unresponsive and seemingly lifeless in his cell. Jimenez, a prisoner serving a sentence for robbery in the maximum security wing of the Asturias Central Penitentiary in northwest Spain, had been sent to the hospital morgue in a body bag. Pathologists, however, noticed an unusual sound akin to snoring emanating from the supposedly lifeless body bag. Initially, Jimenez had been examined by two on-duty doctors who, after detecting no vital signs, had pronounced him dead. A few hours later, a forensic doctor had confirmed the earlier assessments, leading to the issuance of a death report. It wasn't until the mortuary that the medical professionals realized something was seriously amiss. The mistakenly declared corpse had suddenly come back to life, leaving everyone astonished. By that point, Jimenez had already spent some time in a cold storage facility to preserve his body, and his skin had even been marked with scalpel guidelines in preparation for an impending autopsy. The sounds from inside the bag were first noticed by forensic physicians. Jimenez was still alive when the forensic pathologist opened the bag. As he was being transported in an ambulance to another hospital for recovery from this bewildering episode, Jimenez was later diagnosed with a stable medical condition. Prison authorities remained puzzled about how the initial mix-up had occurred. Number 14. Camilla Martinez woke up at her funeral. After an incorrect death certificate was issued for a 3-year-old girl, the grieving family of the child filed a petition alleging negligence on the part of the medical facility in Mexico. According to Mary Jane Peralta, she had brought her daughter, Camilla Martinez, to the Salinas de Hidalgo Basic Community Hospital after the young child started vomiting, experiencing pain, and running a fever. At the hospital, the girl received treatment for dehydration and was given paracetamol for her pain before being discharged. Peralta stated that her daughter had spent only an hour in the hospital, and her condition continued to worsen the next day. Seeking further assistance, Camilla's parents turned to the community doctor, who advised them to return to the hospital. During the second visit, her mother believed that her daughter was neglected, as they had to wait for an extended period for care. She also alleged that medical professionals struggled to provide the infant with oxygen and inject intravenous fluids because they couldn't locate her small veins. Eventually, Camilla was moved to a different room without any of her relatives or parents present. The devastated mother recounted that her daughter was still clinging to her when they carried her away and told her that she had to let her rest in peace. It was during this time that medical professionals declared the child dead due to dehydration. Following the report, the family and well-wishers gathered to pay their last respects. However, they soon noticed that the child was actually still alive. The family was horrified when the young girl awoke, her eyes twitching, and there was dampness on the glass covering the coffin. The sick toddler was quickly taken by ambulance to the hospital. Tragically, her mother claimed that her daughter's pulse rate fell during the trip, and she, unfortunately, passed away for real this time due to brain enlargement, marking a heart-wrenching and devastating ordeal for the family. Number 13. Dead man attends his own funeral after 15 shots. In the realm of unusual funerals, this one takes the cake. Picture this: a deceased man, shot 15 times, not only attending his own funeral, but doing so in a most unexpected way. No, it's not a miracle, but rather a unique choice made by the family. Instead of the conventional casket, they decided to seat 26-year-old Fernando de Jesus Diaz Beto upright on a chair, with a cigarette in hand and his eyes wide open. It's an image that's hard to forget. The story begins with a tragic event where Fernando was fatally shot 15 times in front of his home in San Juan's Villa Carolina neighborhood. With no leads to bring the assailants to justice, his family made a rather unconventional decision for his final farewell. They wanted to remember him just as he was in life, a vibrant and lively individual. So they dressed him in luxurious attire, seated him on a chair with his legs crossed, and even kept his eyes open during the service. This departure from tradition left everyone in attendance startled. It was not just the fact that he was sitting there with his legs crossed, but also that his eyes were wide open. According to the founder of the funeral home, it was a profoundly unique occurrence, as it marked the first time they had ever maintained a deceased person's eyes open during a funeral. One of Fernando's sisters explained that they chose this unorthodox method because he had been an exceptionally cheerful and energetic individual in life, and they wanted to remember him exactly that way. In a sea of somber farewells, this funeral stood out as a heartfelt and unconventional tribute to a life that was tragically cut short. Number 12. Noellarocundo ghostly appearance at her funeral. Noellarocundo journey from Melbourne, Australia to Burundi in January 2015 was meant to be a solemn one, as she was returning to attend her stepmother's funeral. Little did she know that she would find herself at her own funeral just a month later. The shocking turn of events unfolded when her husband, believing falsely that she had been unfaithful, took her life in her native country. The backstory reveals that in 2004, Noella, along with her 5 children, left Burundi for Australia. It was in Australia that she crossed paths with Balenga Kalala, a Congolese refugee who worked alongside her at a resettlement organization, providing translation services in Swahili. Over time, their relationship grew deeper, and they eventually relocated to Melbourne. Noella and Balenga married and had 3 children together. However, by 2015, suspicion had clouded Kalala's mind, and he was convinced that Noella was involved in an affair, despite the absence of any concrete evidence to support his claims. In a tragic twist of events, it was during Noella's trip back to Burundi to attend her stepmother's burial in January 2015 that Kalala decided to take what he believed was rightful retribution for his wife's perceived transgressions. The evening following her stepmother's memorial service, Noellarocundo was physically and emotionally drained. The African heat felt oppressive, and the burial had taken a toll on her. In a moment of support and comfort, she received a call from her husband, who advised her to step outside for some fresh air. Trusting his counsel, she ventured outside, only to be confronted by a man wielding a gun. The armed man forcibly led her into a waiting car where 2 more strangers were waiting. She was then taken to a building where the gunman bound her to a chair and initiated a bewildering interrogation about an alleged affair. Confused and terrified, she couldn't fathom who would send someone to harm her or why. To her shock, one of the captors derisively spoke on the phone, and she overheard her husband instructing them to end her life. However, an unexpected turn of events would spare her life. The hitmen, as they concluded their conversation with her husband, declared that they wouldn't go through with the murder, as they had a policy against harming women and children. The Washington Post reported that the gang also had a connection to one of Noella's siblings. The gang's leader, seeking more money from Kalala, demanded an additional $3,400 in Australian currency to complete the job, bringing the total payment to about $10,000. They issued a warning that Noella had a mere 80 hours to leave the country, as her husband was deadly serious. In an astonishing twist, Kalala, who had falsely believed his wife was deceased, informed her loved ones that she had tragically perished in an accident. However, the supposedly deceased Noellarocundo made an unexpected reappearance at her very own funeral, leaving everyone stunned. Number 11. Gilberto, the dead car washer. One might expect siblings to know each other well enough to recognize each other, but in the case of this Brazilian car washer named Gilberto, the story took a bewildering turn. His appearance at his own funeral sent shockwaves through his family and friends, first filling them with dread and then with overwhelming joy. On that fateful night, his family was in mourning, believing Gilberto had passed away. However, to their astonishment, the man they thought was resting in the coffin suddenly appeared at their front door. They had mistakenly identified a deceased man at the local morgue as Gilberto. It might sound surreal, hearing that there was a casket with you inside it, but that's precisely what happened to him. In an attempt to prove that he was indeed alive, Gilberto showed up at his own funeral. The sight of him initially caused some to faint, while others fled in terror. The mix-up stemmed from a tragic incident over the weekend when a nearby car washer, who bore a striking resemblance to Gilberto, lost his life. The police informed the deceased man's brother, who then went to the mortuary and mistakenly provided Gilberto's name for the body. Given the strong similarities between Gilberto and the deceased man in the coffin, a police inspector later deemed the error understandable, citing their shared profession as car washers. Gilberto revealed that he got wind of the error from a friend he encountered on the street. This friend informed him that his family was preparing for his burial. He had attempted to call them to clarify the situation, but his calls were dismissed as a cruel joke. With no other recourse, Gilberto decided to show up in person at his own funeral to irrefutably demonstrate that he was very much alive. Afterward, he made his way to his mother's house, leaving everyone astounded by the inexplicable turn of events. Number 10. The frozen girl woke up to life. This isn't a tale from the Ice Age or a story straight out of Disney's Frozen. Yet, for a remarkable 6 hours, in the bone-chilling cold of -22 degrees Fahrenheit, Jean Hilliard's body was frozen. Miraculously, she survived, and her incredible ordeal revealed an astonishing human capability previously unknown. Jean's memories of the experience were shrouded in darkness. It all began one evening in December of 1980, when Jean, then just 19 years old, was making her way home after a night of dancing with friends. As she drove along rural roads, her vehicle skidded on ice, landing in a ditch, a not uncommon occurrence in such icy conditions. Seeking help, Jean remembered that a friend lived nearby. She embarked on a journey to reach him, but her strength gradually waned. Even as she spotted her friend's house in the distance, she succumbed to the bone-chilling cold. Her cowboy boots, ill-suited for the freezing ordeal, could no longer provide support. She managed to crawl her way to her friend's yard before collapsing. There, on his doorstep, Jean lay unconscious for 6 agonizing hours, with only her coat and boots as protection in the extreme cold of -22 degrees Fahrenheit. It was only when Wally Nelson discovered her in the morning that he realized her condition. To him, she appeared lifeless, her body stiff as a board. Yet, what caught his attention were tiny bubbles emanating from her nostrils, a sign that she might still be alive. Rushed to the hospital, the medical staff didn't hold much hope. Jean's arm was so frozen that they couldn't insert 4. Despite their belief that she was beyond saving, they began the arduous task of warming her. Heating pads were applied to her limbs, and a call was made to her pastor. A prayer chain was established. By mid-morning, Jean Hilliard began to experience spasms, a faint glimmer of hope, and by midday she had transformed from a rigid block of frozen flesh into a terrified woman, bewildered by her miraculous survival. Incredibly, she was even concerned about how her father would react when he found out his car was in the ditch. Number 9. Nautilus Glycos. In March of 1896, a rather astonishing event occurred involving Nautilus Glycos, a bishop serving in Lesbos, Greece. At the time, he was believed to have passed away, and his body was placed on display at the church following the customary practices. However, an unexpected turn of events took place on the subsequent night during what was termed the Exposition of the Corpse. During this peculiar occurrence, Glycos purportedly sat up and inquired about the purpose of the gathering. In reality, he had simply been enjoying a lengthy nap after being bedridden for several days. Despite the fact that doctors had officially declared the 80-year-old man deceased, He emerged from this slumber alive and well. The supposedly deceased bishop was swiftly attired in his episcopal robes and seated on a throne within the church. His body was displayed to devout worshippers during the day, and a rotating team of priests stood guard over him both day and night, adhering to Orthodox Church regulations. However, it was on the second night of this exposition of the dead that Glycos made a startling reappearance. Suddenly, he sprang up from his seat, gazing around in shock and terror at the assembly he had been a part of. It turns out, the elderly bishop had merely entered a state of lethargy that closely resembled death, which inexperienced doctors hastily misinterpreted as his passing. Number 8. Dead for 20 minutes. Regardless of your religious beliefs or lack thereof, the story of Zach Clements, a Texas teenager, is undeniably thought-provoking. Zach, a healthy high school athlete, found himself in an unexpected and dire situation. While participating in a gym class at his school, he suddenly collapsed, succumbing to cardiac arrest while running. Rushed to the hospital, Zach's condition was so grave that doctors were on the verge of pronouncing him dead, given his lack of pulse for a staggering 20 minutes. Then, a miraculous turn of events occurred. Against all medical odds, Zach Clements was revived, breathing life into a situation that seemed beyond hope. To provide him with the best care possible, Zach was airlifted to a children's hospital in Fort Worth, where he regained consciousness several days later. While Zach's recovery itself remains an inexplicable phenomenon, it was his revelation upon waking up that catapulted his story to viral fame. He shared that during those 20 minutes when he was clinically dead, he had a profound experience. He described encountering a man with long, disheveled hair and a substantial beard, a presence that he unmistakably identified as Jesus. Zach's extraordinary account has had a profound impact. Skeptics have found themselves reconsidering their stance, and others remain utterly perplexed by the inexplicable nature of his ordeal. For Zach's mother, Teresa Clements, while it may pose a medical mystery to the doctors, she has come to accept that her son's return to life was nothing short of divine intervention. Number 7. Tina Heinz. Tina Heinz, a woman previously in good health, had exciting plans for a hike near her Phoenix, Arizona home with her husband. However, as they were preparing to set out, tragedy struck. Tina suddenly collapsed and turned a frightening shade of purple. Her husband acted swiftly, dropping to the ground beside her and performing CPR in a desperate attempt to revive her. Thanks to his efforts, Tina briefly regained consciousness before paramedics arrived on the scene and took over. The situation remained dire during the ambulance ride and her subsequent stay at the hospital. In an astounding sequence of events, Tina had to be resuscitated 6 times over the course of her ordeal, adding up to a staggering 27 minutes when she was effectively considered dead. Yet against all odds, Tina emerged from this near-death experience with a profound message to convey. Using her own words, she managed to convey the chilling but powerful statement, "It's real," which, in her interpretation, alluded to the existence of heaven. Science offers some intriguing insights into this phenomenon. A 2013 study conducted by the University of Michigan, albeit on rats, revealed an unexpected surge of brain activity in the moments leading up to what would typically be considered death. This suggests that in those initial moments following the cessation of bodily functions, the brain continues to exhibit activity akin to a state of consciousness, even entertaining complex thoughts. For Tina and her family, while the message may have appeared cryptic, its essence was crystal clear. Heaven is a tangible reality. Number 6. Cheryl Jackson, who never died, was buried. Cheryl Jackson found her final resting place in the Hamilton Cemetery of Colonial Memorial Park. But here's the astonishing twist. She hadn't actually passed away when her funeral took place. Relatives of Cheryl, her doppelganger, noticed subtle discrepancies in her appearance during the funeral proceedings. However, these differences went largely unnoticed, as the 50-year-old Philadelphia resident had already been declared deceased several weeks prior. Cheryl's mother noted that while many believed the woman in the casket didn't quite resemble her daughter, the resemblance was close enough to assume it was her. There were minor changes in her appearance, including a somewhat altered nose, which were attributed to the embalming process. Nevertheless, these minor discrepancies raised suspicions that something had gone awry during the embalming procedure. But as it turned out, the reality was even more bewildering. The person laid to rest that day was not Cheryl Jackson. It was an entirely different individual. Before we move on, here is today's subscriber's pick. Hey there, inquisitive minds. Feast your eyes on this intriguing photo. Now, what's the story behind this photo? It's a real head-scratcher. The young lady in the picture seems utterly absorbed in something. But what or who could it be? We're stumped, and it's like trying to solve a riddle without a clue. But here's the deal, dear viewers. We need your expertise. What's your take on this enigmatic snapshot? Share your thoughts in the comments below, and let's unravel this captivating mystery together. Number 5. The return of an old man birthed a holiday. Old Man's Day is a unique and heartwarming tradition observed every October in the village of Braffing, Hertfordshire, England. This special day is dedicated to honoring the remarkable story of Matthew Wall, a local farmer whose life took a truly extraordinary turn. Matthew Wall's tale is one of incredible twists of fate. At one point, he was believed to have passed away, and preparations were being made for his burial. However, destiny had other plans. During the funeral procession, an unexpected accident occurred when one of the pallbearers accidentally dropped Matthew's casket. This startling mishap had an astonishing outcome. It miraculously revived Matthew, preventing what could have been a tragic case of premature burial. In the wake of this remarkable incident, Matthew not only survived, but also went on to marry his fiancée and enjoy an additional 24 years of life. His story became an inspiring and enduring legend in the village of Braffing. To commemorate this incredible tale of revival and the fact that Matthew's name had not yet been etched on the list of the departed, the people of Braffing established Old Man's Day. Every year on this special day, the villagers come together to celebrate the enduring spirit of Matthew Wall and the second chance at life that he was granted. It serves as a heartwarming reminder of the unpredictable nature of fate and the resilience of the human spirit, making Old Man's Day a cherished and unique tradition in the village of Braffing. Number 4. Funeral home finds woman breathing hours after declared dead. In a truly perplexing sequence of events, an 82-year-old woman who had been initially declared deceased at the Water's Edge Rehab and Nursing Center in Port Jefferson, Long Island, managed to defy conventional understanding by showing signs of life just 3 hours after her transfer to a funeral parlor. Prior to this bizarre incident, the woman had been receiving hospice care and had been officially pronounced dead at the Alzheimer's Special Care Center in Urbandale. Astoundingly, she was placed into a body bag and subsequently transported to the O.B. Davis Funeral Home in Miller Place. It was during this peculiar episode that the funeral home staff made a startling discovery: unmistakable signs of life. Swiftly recognizing the urgency of the situation, they promptly dialed 911 for immediate assistance. This astonishing turn of events prompted a swift response from local law enforcement, ultimately leading to a thorough investigation by the Attorney General's office. Authorities are now diligently scrutinizing the circumstances surrounding this remarkable and highly unusual occurrence. However, despite this extraordinary twist in her fate, the elderly woman's time was sadly limited. After her eventual return to hospice care, she passed away just a few days later, marking the end of a story that defied the boundaries of the expected and left many questioning the very definition of the end of life. Number 3. Pastor Lukau. A viral video that spread like wildfire across social media featured Pastor Alf Lukau from Alleluia Ministries in a jaw-dropping attempt to resurrect a man during a church service. The video captured the dramatic scene where a somber crowd of mourners had gathered around the coffin as it was solemnly being removed from the hearse. It was a moment of intense grief and sorrow as a woman, who identified herself as the deceased man's landlord, approached the pastor. With a heavy heart, she recounted the tragic story of how the man had fallen ill and started coughing that fateful Friday. In a desperate bid to save him, they had rushed him to the hospital, but their efforts were in vain, and the man tragically passed away while under her care. The congregation and onlookers were already engulfed in sorrow as they awaited the final farewell. However, what transpired next was nothing short of astonishing. The supposedly lifeless body, said to have come directly from the mortuary, suddenly defied all expectations. As Pastor Lukau commenced his fervent prayer, the body within the casket mysteriously sat up, its mouth agape and its eyes wide open. This jaw-dropping and surreal event sent shockwaves through both the gathered crowd and the virtual world, leaving many in disbelief. Social media platforms were abuzz with a cacophony of reactions, ranging from incredulous skepticism to fervent debate. Critics questioned the authenticity of the video, and the pastor's actions came under scrutiny. Regrettably, as more information emerged, it became evident that the entire incident had been carefully staged as a hoax. This revelation cast a long shadow of doubt not only over the pastor himself, but also over the credibility of the purported resurrection. The sensational video, once seen as a miraculous event, turned out to be a carefully orchestrated performance, leaving many to ponder the boundaries of belief and skepticism. Number 2. Mohammed For Khan. In a startling incident, reported by local media, a 20-year-old Indian man from Lucknow, Mohammed For Khan, left his grieving friends and relatives utterly astonished when he regained consciousness during his own burial. This extraordinary event unfolded in the northern Indian state of Uttar Pradesh. For Khan had been involved in a severe accident that had left him unconscious, and it is alleged that due to the family's inability to cover his mounting medical bills, hospital workers declared him dead. His lifeless body was returned to his family that fateful day, and as they prepared for his burial, an astonishing turn of events transpired. According to his older brother, as they were making preparations, some family members noticed unexpected movements in For Khan's limbs. Immediately, he was rushed back to the hospital, where doctors confirmed that he was, in fact, alive and placed him on a ventilator. While his health remained precarious, physicians emphasized that he was not brain dead, as his reflexes were active, and he displayed signs of a pulse and blood pressure. This baffling incident raises questions about whether the hospital declared him dead due to the family's inability to meet the escalating medical expenses. Number 1. Dies for 45 minutes. In the quiet town of West Carlton, Ohio, an astonishing medical miracle unfolded. A man, declared dead after his heart ceased beating for a staggering 45 minutes, defied all odds by suddenly coming back to life, leaving his baffled medical team searching for explanations. The extraordinary sequence of events began when Tony, a resident of West Carlton, experienced an alarming change in his breathing during the night. His vigilant wife, Melissa, a nurse by profession, sensed that something was amiss. Unable to rouse her husband, she immediately sprang into action, initiating CPR and promptly summoning emergency services. Swiftly, a team of paramedics arrived at the scene, and Tony was hurriedly transported to a nearby local hospital. Initially, upon his arrival, there appeared to be a brief moment of stability in his condition. However, this fragile respite was short-lived, as Tony's heart abruptly ceased functioning altogether. After 45 grueling minutes of relentless efforts to revive him, the paramedics reluctantly pronounced Tony dead. The heart-wrenching news was delivered to his grieving family, casting a shadow of despair. But then, in a remarkable turn of events, hope unexpectedly rekindled. Lawrence, Tony's 17-year-old son, seized the moment and rushed to his father's lifeless body. With unwavering determination, he cried out, "Dad, you're not gonna die today!" In a twist that left everyone in disbelief, just minutes after Lawrence's impassioned plea, Tony's heart monitor registered a faint but detectable signal. Astounded doctors and medical staff immediately sprang into action, launching another fervent attempt to revive him. This time, their efforts bore fruit beyond anyone's expectations. Not only did Tony's heart regain its rhythm, but he also gradually regained full consciousness, ultimately emerging from this near-death experience to recount his incredible tale of survival. There you have it, folks. The astonishing stories of people defying the odds and waking up at their own funerals. Share your thoughts in the comments section if these incredible tales left you in awe. Don't forget to hit that like button and share this video with your friends. And if you want more mind-blowing stories like these, be sure to subscribe to our channel. Until next time.